That's not what we started to teach, which was that every baby is, I don't know, let's not even put it on the birth certificate. That's what they wanted.
Were we teaching that?
Yes, we
When were we teaching that?
Teaching it. It was a law here in California. See,
To teach what?
Don't put sex on the birth certificate. We'll see.
Bill Maher is spelling out why he's finally walking away from the left. And honestly, it threw me for a loop. Yes, we've seen him battle progressives for ages, but nobody thought he'd take it this far. Maher insists the left has drifted from common sense and needs a rapid course correction to stay relevant. Brace yourself, this gets fiery.
To admit this country is not as mature as it thinks it is. We elected Obama, and clearly the country freaked out. We're still living in that freak out. We are not as progressed and evolved and intelligent as we think we are because we keep freaking out about this stuff.
Well,
you know?
The left freak out too. The left freaked out about a lot of too.
What did they freak out about?
Gender, race, parenthood, schools, homelessness, crime, the border, education. Like we stopped being a scientific people.
Marsh opens by listing the reasons he's finally breaking with the left, and he ends on a point sharper than all the others. He argues the left has abandoned science, and it's tough to dismiss his claim when some voices treat biological categories as flexible labels that change by simple assertion. It's hard to believe reason still guides the debate. Eventually, you have to name what you're seeing. A move that pushes aside basic empirical standards. At some stage, clarity demands acknowledging the gap between evidence and the narratives being promoted right now anyway.
Like, it's not scientific.
But the left certainly stayed scientific.
No, they didn't.
Why not?
Because they think gender.
Here's the thing. Ma says it's undeniable that the left's fixation on gender issues became a central factor in their election defeat. From his perspective, they pushed the discussion far past what most people considered reasonable, drifting into territory regular Americans never requested and never backed. Rather than prioritizing real-world concerns like jobs, security, and schooling, the left zeroed in on rewriting basic biological language and insisting everyone accept it. Ma argues this non-stop overreach didn't just frustrate moderates, it pushed them out entirely by turning a fringe ideological fight into a national requirement. The left engineered its own collapse, and the final vote totals made that painfully clear.
That's not what we started to teach, which was that every baby is, I don't know, let's not even put it on the birth certificate. That's what they wanted.
Were we teaching that?
Yes, we
When were we teaching that?
Teaching it. It was a law here in California. See,
To teach what?
Don't put on the birth certificate. We'll see. Now we've passed that period now.
I'm sorry, I don't remember that. I mean,
I know, because it doesn't get in the blue sky bubble.
Wait a minute, I'm not just on blue sky.
I really think that's a lot of it, is that some of this stuff doesn't get in to everybody's media.
Funny how things change. The left is suddenly backing away from the very beliefs they once promoted with full force. The same voices that push those ideas with total certainty now act like none of it ever happened. Today, they conveniently forget their own claims, as if the internet left no record. But anyone who lived through recent years remembers exactly what went on. Back then, they fiercely pushed gender identity debates, declaring that even raising a question made you the villain. It was treated like a holy mission. Now that the political climate has flipped and the backlash is obvious, they're hustling to detach themselves from the same positions they spent years defending.
Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's Socialism for the 21st Century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century or any century, a mess.
And here's yet another factor, Ma says, pushed him to break with the left. It's growing romance with socialism. Ma argues that socialism isn't just deeply flawed, it's a political meltdown waiting to unfold. From his perspective, embracing socialist themes doesn't motivate the Democratic Party. It drags it downward and risks wiping out whatever momentum remains. Americans have watched enough global examples to understand where socialism usually leads, and most have no interest in wagering their future on it. Ma believes the left keeps promoting a doctrine voters simply don't trust, and rather than learning from public pushback, they lean in harder. To him, that's nothing but a blueprint for political collapse.
It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
New York now appears convinced it can rebuild socialism, polish it, repair its weaknesses, and somehow succeed where every earlier experiment collapsed. Local leaders act as if they've invented a smoother, more refined edition of the ideology, one they're certain won't buckle under real-world pressure. Ma isn't persuaded. He argues New York is marching straight into the same pitfalls that countless nations have walked into across history. No matter how it's marketed, he says, socialism always lands in the same place. Economic strain, swelling government power, and a gradual loss of individual liberty. Tomorrow, New York isn't drafting a fresh chapter. It's replaying an old script, and the ending has never changed.
For 66 years, Playboy magazine was also a fact of American life. Sears sold your father a mattress, and Playboy was what he hid under it. It was a surefire product. Pictures of tits, and then 25 cartoons about Santa Claus. Plus real journalism. You could read an interview with Carter while enjoying photos of Bush. But then it started messing around with the formula. Like the Democratic Party, Playboy decided they didn't need straight men anymore.
Here, Ma pins what he calls the woke virus squarely on the Democratic Party itself. In his view, the party walked away from the everyday priorities of its base: work, safety, rising costs, and basic stability. Instead, it dove headfirst into ideological fights most Americans never requested. Rather than building solutions that might actually improve people's day-to-day lives, Democrats locked onto gender identity disputes, elevating them as if they were the central issue of contemporary politics. Maher argues this fixation didn't remain limited to policy debates. It drifted into nearly every part of American culture, spreading like a cultural infection. Even long-standing brands that once reflected mainstream values weren't spared. He highlights Playboy magazine as a clear example, pointing out how it shifted away from its original persona and morphed into a platform repeating the same woke themes dominating the
They put transgender women and gay men on the cover, and predictably sales, like their subscribers' penises, collapsed. The staff began using terms like intersectionality, positivity, and privileging. And in response, Playboy readers used terms like no thanks, get the f out of here, and bye-bye. At one point, Playboy, yes, Playboy, even dropped the which is like cigar aficionado announcing, we're getting rid of the cigars. It went from entertainment for men to re-education for nobody, and enlightened their way to unpopularity. Meanwhile, Kim Kardashian posed for another magazine and broke the internet with her ass.
Just as the Democratic Party paid the price, every institution that jumped headfirst into the woke trend ended up facing serious fallout. Ma argues that embracing these ideological waves wasn't merely a cultural risk. It turned into a financial catastrophe for countless major companies. Brands that once ruled their markets suddenly found themselves pushing away loyal buyers, watering down the identity that made them successful, and drifting far from the principles that built their reputations. For many, the damage was swift and severe. Sales fell, stock values dropped, and longtime customers walked off in frustration. Playboy, once a cultural heavyweight, tried to reinvent itself through woke messaging and lost the very supporters who sustained it for generations. Budweiser, after tying itself to divisive social branding, suffered one of the most dramatic consumer blows.
Sometimes you got to give the people what they want. But for some weird reason, it's apparently tempting for some people to not do that. Because even Cracker Barrel recently decided that they felt a little embarrassed that it was so popular with bumpkins who salivate at the sight of an old wagon wheel screwed to the wall. So they changed it to this, which got them no new customers while pissing off the old ones. It reminded me of when Chuck Schumer said in 2016 that for every blue-collar Democrat we lose in Western Pennsylvania, we're going to pick up 2 moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Philly, Ohio, Illinois, and Wisconsin. Yeah, how'd that work out?
While Trump was out on the campaign trail rallying Americans with direct, concrete plans centered on the economy, national security, and expanding jobs, the left was consumed with an entirely different mission. Instead of confronting the urgent challenges affecting ordinary voters, they focused on teaching the public about gender identity and debates surrounding trans women in sports. And while those topics may have mattered to a narrow audience, they were far removed from the immediate concerns of most Americans who were thinking about their paychecks, rising crime, and the overall direction of the country. Ma argues that this disconnect in priorities played a major role in shaping the election's outcome. By pouring energy into abstract cultural arguments while neglecting fundamental issues, the left unintentionally gave Trump a significant advantage. The result was a sweeping victory that stunned many progressives, leaving them confused about why their message, one they viewed as morally and culturally important, failed to...
At least Cracker Barrel had the sense to immediately say, oh, sorry, and put the sling blades back on the wall. Democrats don't seem to be doing that. They still seem to want to be that upscale store that impresses celebrities. Anybody remember Barney's? It was this store in New York that started in the 1920s, as a discount clothing joint on unfashionable, grimy 7th Avenue, a place where their customers, the working man, could get a decent suit at a very reasonable price. I remember going there in 1993 to get my wardrobe for a new show Comedy Central was launching called Politically Incorrect.
Ma argues the Democratic National Committee should have taken a serious look at its recent setbacks and adjusted course, learning from the choices that cost them key races. Yet instead of shifting direction, the party seems to be doubling down on the very approaches that pushed voters away. Ma finds the whole thing astonishing. How does a political organization, rejected for leaning too heavily into woke ideology, respond by embracing something even more divisive like socialism? From his angle, it breaks basic political logic. Rather than rebuilding trust with the voters they lost, the party seems determined to push them further away. Ma suggests this isn't merely a strategic mistake. It's a deep disconnect from the concerns shaping everyday life. While most Americans are thinking about jobs, rising prices, and safety, the DNC is increasingly focused on ideological ventures with little mainstream appeal. For Ma, this reveals a troubling pattern. Instead of learning from defeat, the left keeps advancing ideas that risk repeating the same failures, further damaging its credibility and its chances in future elections. In the end, Ma delivers a stark conclusion. The left's fixation on woke culture, gender debates, and socialist themes has alienated voters and weakened both the Democratic Party and major institutions. While Trump centered his campaign on concrete issues affecting everyday people, the left pursued culture battles most voters never asked for, costing them support and political ground. Ma warns that unless the party returns to practical policy and reconnects with its base, it will keep making the same costly errors, leaving its future in doubt. And that brings us to the close of today's video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.